On May 17, 2018, Atlas Road in Boksburg looked like any other busy street. Cars moved along, people walked on the sidewalks, and everything felt normal. But in an instant, that ordinary day turned into a living nightmare. Out of nowhere, three armed G4S trucks found themselves trapped. What followed was one of the most brutal and calculated CIT heists in South Africa's history. The attackers struck with terrifying speed, seizing the cash and leaving behind nothing but destruction. This wasn't just a random act of violence, it was the work of a ruthless gang, masterminded by one of the most notorious criminals in the country's history. But how did they pull off such a brazen heist? Who were the men behind the masks? And how did one of the most dangerous CIT syndicates in South Africa rise and fall? This is the story behind the heist that shook South Africa. In South Africa, cash-in-transit heists are not just a crime. They are a brutal reality that has left a dark mark on the nation's roads, parking lots, and highways. These attacks are not random acts of violence. They are the result of a long and violent history, one that has turned armored vans carrying cash into prime targets for some of the country's most dangerous criminals. To understand how this threat grew to such terrifying heights, we need to look back to a time when cash was the heartbeat of South Africa's economy. Long before mobile banking and digital payments, cash was king. Businesses relied on it, wages were paid in it, and trucks moved millions of rand across the country daily. But this also made these trucks more than just vehicles. They became treasure chests on wheels, drawing the attention of criminals. In the early days, cash-in-transit heists were small-time crimes. Robbers would try to ambush guards walking between armored vans and banks, hoping to grab a bag of cash and flee. These attacks were often messy and failed more often than not. But over time, the criminals became more skilled, organized, and ruthless. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, cash-in-transit heists had evolved into a major criminal enterprise. Gangs started to form, each taking control of its own territory. They created a blueprint for these heists that was more than just simple robbery. It became an operation involving stolen vehicles, high-powered explosives, and military-style tactics. By the 2010s, cash-in-transit heists had exploded into a nationwide epidemic. News broadcasts were filled with images of trucks burning, shell casings littering highways, and security guards barely surviving these violent. People in entire communities began to live in fear, knowing that any armored truck driving through their streets could become the next target. The heists were no longer just about money. They had become a way for the gangs to show power, to prove that they could strike anywhere, instill fear in anyone, and escape without being caught. And for a long time, it seemed like they were right. But among these ruthless criminals, one name would soon come to define this dark chapter in South Africa's history: Wellington "Bibi" Tsenenda. Tsenenda's rise from a small-time criminal to one of South Africa's most wanted gang leaders began in Tembisa, a busy area in the Gauteng province where Tsenenda grew up. At first glance, he seemed like any other young man just trying to find his way in the world. But behind the surface, there was a much darker path starting to unfold. Tsenenda didn't jump straight into the world of organized crime. His journey into that dangerous life took time. It started with small offenses, but soon he was involved in bigger and more dangerous activities. Slowly, he moved from petty crimes to planning and leading violent cash-in-transit CIT heists. His natural leadership skills, mixed with his growing ambition, helped him build a powerful criminal gang that would soon spread terror across the country. At first, Tsenenda worked with just a few trusted associates, but as he gained a reputation, his network expanded. His gang didn't stay confined to one area. Soon, they were carrying out sophisticated and brutal robberies all over South Africa. While the exact details of Tsenenda's first cash-in-transit heist remain unclear, law enforcement agencies have traced his criminal activity back to 2016. That year, in August, a 12-member gang, led by Tsenenda, attempted to rob an cash vehicle near Gravelot in Limpopo. The plan was carefully executed. As the armored vehicle moved along its route, the gang launched their attack. Gunfire rang out as they tried to force the vehicle to stop. Inside, the security crew fought back, engaging in a fierce with the attackers. Amid the chaos, one of the gang's vehicles lost control while trying to ram the armored van and crashed. With the situation getting out of hand, the attackers hijacked a passing motorist to make their escape, fleeing the scene empty-handed. This incident marked the beginning of Chinenda's violent and ambitious rise in the world of cash-in-transit heists. Following the failed robbery in Gravelot, the Hawks, South Africa's elite directorate for priority crime investigation, teamed up with crime intelligence and the tactical response team. They doubled down on their efforts to bring the gang to justice. Their hard work led to the arrest of 6 suspects. One of the criminals was caught right after the incident, while the others were rounded up in later operations in Soshanguve and Limpopo. During these arrests, the police seized several rifles and explosives, showing just how dangerous and prepared the gang was for violent confrontations. But despite these arrests, Wellington Chinenda was never captured. Instead of hiding or laying low, he grew bolder, pulling off even more successful cash-in-transit heists, far more successful than the failed attempt back in 2016. Then, on the morning of May 17, 2018, Atlas Road in Boksburg was as busy as any other weekday. Cars moved along, people went about their day, and businesses opened their doors. Everything seemed perfectly normal. But beneath the surface, a plan was quietly unfolding, one that would soon turn this peaceful street into a scene of chaos. In the early hours of that morning, 3 G4S armored vehicles rolled out of their depot, heavy with cash meant for various banks. The security guards inside were trained and prepared for most threats, but they thought this day would be no different from the countless others. As they drove along their usual route, they didn't realize they were already being watched. Chinenda's gang, a well-organized group known for their violent heists, had been planning this attack for weeks. Their scouts had studied the route, observed the guards, and taken note of the times when the armored vans would be most vulnerable. The gang was prepared, and on this morning, they were ready to strike. They blended into the everyday traffic, waiting for the right moment to move. At around 9:30 a.m., the armored vans reached a stretch of Atlas's road where the attackers had set their trap. Out of nowhere, 4 vehicles pulled out of the traffic and boxed in the armored trucks. Among them were a white BMW and a dark SUV, high-performance cars that allowed the attackers to move quickly and with precision. Without any warning, fire erupted. The peaceful morning was shattered as bullets slammed into the armored vans, sparks flying as rounds hit the reinforced glass. Inside, the security guards tried to radio for help, but the attack came fast and furious. The glass cracked under the assault, and the air filled with the deafening noise of gunfire. Knowing that shooting alone wouldn't get them inside the vans, the attackers moved to the next stage of their plan. They pulled out explosives. With chilling calmness, they attached the bombs to the rear doors of the armored vans, stepping back just far enough to avoid the explosion's blast radius. A moment later, the explosives went off. The blast ripped through the metal, sending debris flying and thick smoke filling the air. But even then, the violence didn't stop. With the rear doors blown open, the attackers stormed in, masked and armed with rifles. They quickly grabbed the scattered cash and shoved it into duffel bags. Their movements were swift, practiced, and almost mechanical. They knew exactly what they were doing, and within minutes, they were gone, vanishing into the streets just as quickly as they had appeared. The violence of the attack wasn't just limited to the security guards. The explosion and gunfire spread to innocent bystanders as well. Cars screeched to a halt as drivers panicked and tried to reverse out of the danger zone. Some people jumped out of their cars and ran for cover. The chaos left 6 bystanders injured, caught in the crossfire of the attack. Despite being shocked by the violence, the security guards fought back. One guard was shot in the leg, while another suffered head injuries from the blast. But they were outgunned and overwhelmed, with no chance against the attackers' firepower. Within minutes, the gang had loaded the stolen cash into their cars. Law enforcement quickly responded. Calls came in from terrified witnesses, and the police launched a coordinated manhunt. Helicopters flew overhead, tracking the gang's escape, while officers set up roadblocks and scanned the area for the suspects. The chase led the police to the George Gach hostel in Johannesburg, a place known for harboring criminals. There, the operation intensified. Tactical teams surrounded the area and arrested 5 of the suspects, who were caught off guard by the speed of the police action. Among the items seized were a rifle believed to have been used in the heist and several bags of stolen cash. But the rest of the gang managed to slip away, disappearing into the city. Back on Atlas Road, investigators worked through the wreckage. They examined the damaged armored vans, counted the bullet holes in surrounding vehicles, and spoke to shaken witnesses. Videos of the attack, filmed by bystanders, quickly spread across social media, and millions watched as the horrifying events unfolded. After the daring Boksburg heist, South African law enforcement realized they were dealing with a criminal syndicate that was far more dangerous and organized than most. The Hawks knew they weren't just chasing random criminals. Chinenda was a mastermind, pulling the strings behind these violent heists with military-like precision. He had a network of armed men using explosives and automatic rifles, showing no regard for human life. His name was now linked to a growing number of violent cash-in-transit robberies across the country. To bring this threat under control, a special task force was created. Crime intelligence agents tracked phone records and financial transactions, searching for any clue that could lead them to the criminals. Cybercrime experts monitored encrypted messages and traced digital footprints to burner phones and hidden bank accounts. Forensic analysts matched bullet casings to weapons seized during the heists, and detectives pieced together the puzzle, revealing a complex web of robberies tied to Chinenda's gang. The heat was on. Police raided locations across Gauteng, capturing one associate after another. Among the criminals arrested was Errol Vilil Present, a surprising find. He wasn't just a petty criminal. He worked at the ANC headquarters in Johannesburg, serving as the party's secretary for the Dobsonville branch. This revelation shocked the public and showed just how deep Chinenda's network ran. But even as the task force closed in, Chinenda remained elusive. Like smoke, he slipped through their fingers every time, vanishing from safe houses just before the police arrived. His movements were unpredictable, and his whereabouts remained a mystery. Had he hidden in the townships of Gauteng? Had he fled to another province? Rumors spread, but solid evidence was hard to come by. Then, on the night of July 26, 2018, fate finally intervened. A routine police patrol was driving through the streets of Bloemfontein when the officers noticed something odd. In the distance, a car was driving nervously, with the driver acting suspiciously. The officers decided to pull the car over. What seemed like a simple traffic stop quickly turned into something much bigger. When they asked the driver for his ID, something about him seemed familiar. But where had they seen him before? After a quick check, the officers discovered that the vehicle was stolen. The tension in the air grew, and the officers instinctively reached for their ordering the driver out of the car. As they searched the driver and checked his identity, shock hit them. The man they had stopped was none other than Wellington "BB" Chinenda, the mastermind behind the violent cash-in-transit CIT syndicate they had been hunting for months. It felt surreal. After all the careful planning and high-risk raids, they had caught South Africa's most wanted CIT kingpin almost by chance. News of Chinenda's arrest spread quickly. Within hours, he was moved under heavy security to Mpumalanga, where he would face a long list of charges: attempted robbery and illegal possession of firearms. Each charge showed just how much chaos and terror he had caused over the years. But now, behind bars, his reign was finally over. Major General Prince Mokotedi, head of the Hawks in Gauteng, didn't hide his satisfaction. For him, this wasn't just about one arrest. "We catch him, and we end it all," he said, sending a victorious message to a nation tired of CIT violence. But even in custody, Chinenda was far from defeated. Investigators quickly realized that his arrest was just the beginning. His syndicate, though weakened, was still active, and his loyal followers were still on the run. The Hawks ramped up their efforts, getting more information from Chinenda's associates and slowly dismantling the network he had built. Interrogations revealed the secrets of his criminal empire: the hidden safe houses, the stockpiles of weapons, and the encrypted messages that had helped him stay one step ahead of the law for so long. It was a tough lesson for South African law enforcement, teaching them about the brutal world of organized crime. A special team of crime intelligence agents, cybercrime experts, forensic analysts, and detectives was put together to track down the remaining criminals. Their hard work paid off, leading to the arrest and prosecution of several key members of Chinenda's gang. On February 21, 2025, the South Gauteng High Court in Johannesburg handed down harsh sentences to 5 gang members involved in the heist. Paul Sibanda, 56, was sentenced to 36 years. Thado Gaupatwe, 33 to 38 years. Thabo Ponatshego Molefe, 43 to 40 years. Sibusiso Zake Kumalo, 43 to 38 years. And Tapelo Arnold Nshabalang, 35 to 38 years. These sentences were for charges like robbery with aggravating circumstances, attempted possession of illegal firearms, and causing explosions. However, as of now, there's no information available about Wellington "BB" Chinenda's sentencing for his role in the CIT heists. While he was arrested in July 2018 after being found with a stolen car, Details about his trial or sentencing haven't been made public.